The rise of China in relation to clean energy in the past couple of years has been nothing short of revolutionary. This transformation at such a scale and with sheer speed has left many at a loss for words, while the country is adding clean power capacity at an unprecedented rate. This year alone saw China adding as much clean power generation capacity in the first half as what the entire United Kingdom produces annually. This is more than a remarkable feat of engineering and investment. This is the moment that defines the globe's fight against climate change. In this in-depth analysis, we look at what drives China's clean energy surge, what it means for global climate efforts, and the challenges ahead. It is not just about numbers and statistics, but seeks to bring out an understanding of the changing outlook of the global energy landscape, the drivers of China's clean energy revolution, and what that might mean for the future. Growth in China's clean energy this year has been nothing short of phenomenal. Between them, the country added a record 150 gigawatts of new solar and wind capacity in the first 6 months. To put that into perspective, it is about the same as the whole of the UK's electricity production from every source for the equivalent period last year. A record 293 gigawatts of wind and solar power were installed in China by the end of 2023, underlining not just the commitment of the country, but also its capability to complete such large-scale projects. This is a transformative rate of capacity addition. It marks a transition from not only within China, but also globally, moving from being one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gases to potentially leading from the front in renewable energy. These figures of new capacity are staggering, but more than statistics of energy, they are a signal of something much bigger, a new development in the global energy landscape. The surge in clean energy signifies that China is not merely catching up with global trends, but is positioning its leadership in the transition to renewable energy. This transition is critical not only for China, but for the entire world. As the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases, China's energy policies have huge implications for global climate change efforts. The rapid scaling up of clean energy capacity may mark a point of inflection, one where China begins shifting from being part of the problem to becoming a significant part of the solution. Behind the surge in China's clean energy, the most powerful drivers have been government policies. Chinese leadership has grasped the imperative to transition towards a low-carbon economy and followed that realization with heavy investment into heavy-hitting policies. They are the ones that do not just plant new wind farms and solar panels, but upgrade the grid to handle renovation of renewable energy production. The government in China has invested billions of dollars in infrastructure for clean energy. In return, this has helped drive down the costs of renewable energy technologies to be more competitive with traditional fossil fuels. What's more, these policies are part of a larger strategy to turn China into the global leader in the technology of green things. But China's clean energy boom is only partly about being green. It's also very good for business. The country has surged to be a global leader in everything from solar panels to electric vehicles. That leadership translates into significant economic advantages as China is able to export its technology and expertise to other countries wanting to switch over to clean energy. The economic incentives for clean energy are all too clear. China's leadership of green technology markets, such as solar photovoltaics and wind turbines, has enabled the country to build up a healthy domestic industry that employs millions. Its leadership in electric vehicles testifies to efforts the country is making to reduce dependency on fossil fuels. Hybrids and fully electric cars accounted for over half of new models sold in July alone. China's push for clean energy extends from power generation into the transport sector. The country has gone out of its way to popularize electric vehicles, a crucial ingredient in taming emissions from one of the largest emitters of carbon dioxide, the transport sector. In this regard, the rapid growth of the EV market in China is a pointer that the country is serious about reducing its carbon footprint. The subsidies to buyers, substantial investment in charging infrastructure, and setting of stringent emissions standards on traditional vehicles are many other policies that the government has handed down to further the adoption of EVs. Indeed, these efforts have recently shown signs of paying off. with more than half of all new cars sold in China being hybrid or fully electric. Heavy industries, particularly the transformation of the steel industry, are also important features in the realms of China's clean energy push. The steel industry has conventionally been among the largest emitters of carbon dioxide in China. Recent developments, however, show a turn in this area too. For the first time, no new permits were issued for coal-fired plants in the first half of this year. This is a monumental step forward for an industry traditionally among the most polluting. The use of less coal in the steel sector forms part of a wider strategy for lowering emissions from heavy industries, those very sectors which are most difficult to decarbonize. One of the most intriguing questions brought about by China's clean energy juggernaut has got to do with whether carbon emissions in the country have already peaked. If the answer is yes, that could prove to be a game changer for global climate efforts. China has been responsible for about a quarter of the world's carbon emissions, roughly equivalent to the combined emissions of all developed countries. There are, however, hints that this narrative is changing. This March, carbon dioxide emissions from energy and cement production, two of the largest contributors to China's carbon footprint, began to decline. It was the first quarterly decline in emissions to be recorded since China's economy reopened after strict zero-COVID lockdowns. According to SRIE, power sector emissions were down about 3%, and cement emissions were down by 7%. Even oil consumption showed a decline of 3%. If the trends continue, 2023 could well be the peak in China's emissions, which would mark the pivot of history in the global fight against climate change. While this novel growth in clean energies is very promising, let's not forget coal plays a colossal role in China's energy makeup. In 2023, 60% of China's power was covered by coal. While new coal plants are being built at a slower rate, for instance, only 8 gigawatts were added this half year, China is still building more coal plants. It brings us to the tipping point, capacity versus generation. Just because a country has the capacity to produce a certain amount, it doesn't mean that that is what is generated and used. There is an often seen difference between the two in China. Economic and political factors often result in the construction of power plants that run at a fraction of their capacity. So in terms of actual emissions, real-world impacts may be less than these impressive numbers would suggest. China stands at the fork in the road on the journey to clean energy, with its rapidly firming clean energy future juxtaposed against a remarkably resilient reliance on coal. The decisions China makes in the coming years will be very important, not only for the country, but also for the whole world. Among such critical moments is the imminent COP29 UN Climate Summit, where countries under the Paris Agreement will be called upon to draft new national emissions cutting plans. What happens at this summit may reveal the direction of China's energy policy and its role in the global fight against climate change. Another factor likely to impact China's future energy policy is the U.S. presidential election, due to take place just days before the COP29 summit. If the U.S. remains committed to the Paris Agreement, China will come under immense pressure to agree to even more stringent cuts in greenhouse gas emissions. If not, however, the future may look very different. The U.S.-China relationship is complex and increasingly friction-laden, but cooperation from the two countries is vital in the fight against global climate change. As the two largest economies and the two biggest emitters of greenhouse gases, what the U.S. does, what China does, will have a profound consequence for the world's ability to meet its climate goals. China's clean energy surge is one of rapid transformation compelled by a multitude of government policy, economic incentives, and greater recognition of the need to address the climate crisis. Just as much, it is a story that remains unfinished, a narrative akin to additional challenges and uncertainties. The progress made by China in the direction of clean energy is nothing short of remarkable. Many would say that it is already well on its way to becoming a global leader in transitioning to renewable energy. However, dependence on coal and striking a balance between economic growth and environmental sustainability are huge challenges. But going into the future, the world will be looking at how full a heading curve A embracing of clean energy potential that country will manage to pull off, or if coal will hold it back. Its outcome will have wide-reaching implications for global climate efforts and the future of our planet. What do you think? Is China on its way to global clean energy leadership, or does coal remain an anchor that will hold the country back? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.